Just getting a Grammy nomination is a big burst of wind in your sails as far as the business goes and people like all of a sudden paying attention. So that's been really cool.
So I guess to start, you just last month received your first ever Grammy nomination. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you found out and what your reaction to the news was.
We found out on the road. We were actually in Yukon, like way up north in Canada doing the show. And I knew the announcements were coming out that day. So I was kind of keeping my eye on things and hoping we had a chance. Um, but we were kind of, the internet wasn't great up there. So kind of kept getting logged out and logged in. So it was a little nerve-wracking. And then Michelle, my assistant, came over and knocked on my door like frantically. I heard a really frantic knock on my door. So I knew we had it. We had it. Yeah.
That's so exciting. And what does it mean to you personally to be receiving recognition from the Recording Academy? I mean, just in general at this point in your career, but then also for this particular project.
It feels great. I mean, first of all, I'm really proud of the work I put into this album. Like, I'm not only the intention of supporting and promoting these pioneering women guitar players, but just the amount of work I put into it. There was years of study and application and um, so to see that rewarded is awesome because you do it, you don't do it for that, but it's nice if people recognize that and are happy about that too, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when we last spoke in early March, and I think at that time you had mentioned that this project, it's not just been a couple of years that you've been working on it, it's been like a 2 decade long journey for you, right?
Yeah, like to actually execute some of these guitar techniques is taken a couple of decades to really get comfortable with them, like some of the classical and flamenco techniques. Yeah, it's a lot. It's like a lot of daily study. It's a lot of minutia, and a lot of people don't realize maybe what goes into some of this stuff. But as a musician, there's these moments of excitement and elation, and where you get the adrenaline rush. But then there's just like the tedious hours of just sitting there learning something, and I mean, I like both aspects of it, but it's challenging, like to sit there year in and year out and go over, one technique on guitar, which is what I did.
And for something like the Piedmont folk picking style or the Carter scratch, I mean, how long did that really? I mean, as you've said, it's been years, but does it get frustrating to be working on it constantly? And how do you kind of mark that progress or how have you with over the last couple of decades?
That's kind of what makes musicians. I mean, we're a little crazy that way. Like I think our minds must work in these, you know, like I was talking about minutia up to, like the two aspects of seeing things that we're very seldom in like on the even keel of like just normalcy. It's usually you're diving into something very, detailed and then you're trying to expand your mind at the same time. But I know I'm being a little vague about it, but for instance, like with the Carter scratch, I had to sit there, like I really had to analyze what she was doing with her right hand. Her left hand is not a super challenging thing, but the right hand is quite complex in both Piedmont finger picking and the Carter scratch. Um, so I had to work with a metronome. I had to slow it down. I painstakingly went through parts, and it's really like baby steps. It's like going back and being a child again, and you're learning something from a very easy, very basic place. And you have to kind of let your ego go and go, okay, I don't got this. I do not have this. I'm gonna try. And it's like each day, but it took me years. Yeah. With the Carter scratch, it took at least 3 years of studying Maybell's style and working with metronome and trying to get it even and because she was like a really strong rhythm player. And so your rhythm has to be really even. That's why the metronome was so essential for me because it just had to be like a drum. And the Piedmont thing I've been working on since I was a teenager. I actually got into finger folk picking, doing that oscillating bass pattern with the thumb while while you're picking out a melody with the top strings. It's quite complex, and you really like. I could show you, but it probably won't. You won't hear it as well on Zoom, but you have to go really slow, and it's really frustrating. It's just really frustrating. So.
And I saw a recent video that you recorded for Guitar World when you were breaking down like Elizabeth Cotton's finger picking style in particular. And from what I understand, she held her guitar very differently from the way you hold yours, which kind of seemed to add to the complications for you. I
Yeah.
wonder how, when you were trying to replicate her style as much as possible, how did that factor into your approach for her songs?
Well, I had studied other finger pickers like I think Fred McDowell, Mississippi John Hurt, who kind of play in a similar style. So I had studied them since I was like I said from a teen. With Cotton, she plays left-handed upside down, so there's really no way. There's no easy way to decipher that. You just kind of I always make a joke about it, I'm like when I was learning it, I was doing a lot of that. It's counterintuitive. Her voicings are all opposite, so it's almost impossible. You have to just listen and follow the melodies and try to execute it like that. There's no way unless you're playing left-handed upside down, which I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be quite a different style deviation for you, right? Just try to flip it all around.
That's way farther than I'm willing to go with this. Like, I just couldn't do it. No.
And you mentioned like listening to all these songs over and over again, really studying the guitar players and using a metronome. Did you have any other tools that you use? Like, would you ever write out instructions for yourself or anything like that?
Well, with the classical piece I did, Romance in A minor, I used tab, and I think I might have used tab on Charo's Malagueña as well. Like I studied a couple of different versions of Malagueña, La Malagueña, and I did refer to tab. I didn't read the notation because I just found the tab was just way easier to deal with. Because notation on guitar can be challenging too because there's so many of the same notes in different parts of the guitar. So you have to figure out what part they're talking about, and it's kind of a mind game. But so I used some tab, and with Romance in A minor, I had to follow. That's a scripted piece, which is here's the piece. It's already written. You have to play that, and for let's say a classical musician, that's normal. That's what they do. But for a blues musician, it's not normal. We don't read music. We play improvised music. So when you have a scripted piece, you really have to stick with it, and play that piece, which was very challenging.
Yeah. And I wonder when we last spoke, you had mentioned that you'd already started playing some of the music from One Guitar Woman for live audiences. And I just wonder now that the album has been officially out for several months, what has the reaction been among those live audience members?
Absolutely overwhelmingly positive. Yeah. I just got done a few gigs up in Canada of solo gigs, and I've been doing some in Austin. I've been kind of interspersing them. I did one in LA. And all our shows now feature part of the album. So I've been going out with the band and opening for myself essentially and doing a portion of the album acoustic and then bringing the band out and really broadening the scope of what I'm able to do musically, which I love. Um, but the audience response is overwhelmingly positive. And the other thing that I've really noticed is women are really into it. And generally, with guitar, females aren't your number one audience with guitar work. Generally, I'm not saying that's a generalization, but they love the stories and they love the idea that, hey, these women were here all this time. They were here a long time ago, 100 years ago, doing this. And, we have a place in the history of this, and it's a really important legacy. Some of these artists are freaking geniuses. I mean, all of them really. I mean, from Maybelle Carter to Sister Rosetta Tharpe to Lydia Mendoza to Memphis Minnie, they all have this kind of genius mentality, and really people are excited to hear their stories and just get inside their mindset. For me, it was more of a mindset thing, like who thinks like this way back then? Who would do that, you know? What kind of person is this? And they're all remarkable people.
That's really cool. And great to hear that women are responding so positively too. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, women are responding positively and thinking, wow, maybe we do have a place in guitar culture, you know, like maybe I do like guitar shows. Like I never thought I would, but you know.
That's awesome. I,
Yeah.
I wonder too about the guitar itself because I think we spoke earlier about how you had gone in to Mexico during a trip in 2022 to pick out this guitar, and I know that you had mentioned it was made by Salvador Castillo, and I wonder since this guitar was so special for this album and used on every single song, have you kept in communication with him as this album was released, and or you know, and more recently with your Grammy nomination? Is that a communication that you've maintained because of how important this guitar is?
I wish I had done more. He's very Spanish, and I haven't. And I don't think he's on social media that much. I did see a few posts on Facebook at one time, but I should reach out again and keep him in the loop because I always talk about him and try to tag him. And but you know, there's a different world down there, and they're real craftspeople that get up every day and work with their hands and are building instruments. And I'm not sure they're watching like what's going on in, you know, America on Facebook. But I think he every now and then he tunes in. But I think he's a real artist, so he may or may not be aware. But I always talk about Paracho and how special it is, and how people should go there. Every guitar player who would love you know, beautiful handmade flamenco or classical guitar should go down there and see these amazing builders.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you describing like walking through the shop and finding, you know, and just being amazed by the instruments on display down there.
Yeah, there's so much, they're so soulful and they're so special and unique. Everybody's got a building method and things they specialize in. And Salvador, what was cool about him is he played the guitar for me, and I could tell he just loved his own guitars so much. Like it's almost like they're his babies. And you know, going to a certain home, he, you know, and then I played it and he kind of looked at me playing, and you know, it was this whole thing going on without me having any, you know, way to really communicate with him. I had a translator with me who was helping me, but you know, we were kind of communicating through the instrument, which was really magical.
Even more special that way, maybe.
Really, yeah, very special.
I want to go back to, you know, some of the finger picking styles that you had to learn for this album over several years. Are there any that you think you would like to carry forward? I mean, I think you had said during our conversation that you'll be carrying these girls with you for the rest of your life, the rest of your career. But I wonder if there's any style in particular that really jumped out at you that you have a particular fondness for.
Well, I love the right hand techniques in general because I play a lot with, you know, on the nylon string. I I will use a thumb pick. But I often will just use my nails. Um, when I'm at home, I never pick up my pick. I just practice. But what I find interesting is because I also play Telecaster, and I've been able to apply these techniques onto my electric playing too, and they kind of cross, they weave across, and they, because of right hand techniques, that's where you can really find some personality in your playing, I think. I mean, I'm not very fast with my left hand, so I'm not like, you know, but if you really develop your right hand, so all those classical techniques, um, from, you know, triplets, rasgueado, or finger picking, or piccata, you know, all these things that are pretty well-known techniques that you use on a nylon string guitar. I like to apply those to my electric guitar and see how, and you know, now I feel very comfortable just weaving it all together, like going from using a pick, holding my thumb pick like a flat pick, or using my fingers open. I mean, I kind of just mess around with it, but it's been a long time developing it. I was always fascinated with the right hand. I think the right hand is just that's where it's at.
Great, great. And I wonder, after all the success that you've had with One Guitar Woman, I think lots of fans will be wondering, are you considering a volume two?
Maybe I have a few projects right now kind of stacked up, but I could see that happening. And if I did that, I would expand into maybe ensembles and focus on other things, But it's in the back of my mind, but like I said, I've got a few things already stacked up I got to get to.
Gotcha. Are you able to talk about any of those new projects?
Well, I'm gonna finish my book, which is based also on women guitar players. So, um, that's one of the next projects. And I also have a band, the Pistolas, here in Texas, who are really great. And we've expanded the people in the band, so we want to make a bigger band ensemble, album together. So those are two things that are probably going to happen the first. And the book is based around interviews I did with women guitar players, and from 2001 till about 2013 or so.
Wow, those both sound very exciting.
Yeah.
I wonder, going back to the Grammy nomination, I wonder if, you mentioned that when you're performing for live audiences, you've noticed women in particular gravitating towards the music and the stories of these women. I wonder, do you think that the Grammy nomination itself could have the opportunity, due to the high profile of that award show, could have the opportunity to expose new audiences to the female guitar pioneers that your album pays tribute to?
I think it can, and I think it already has, because I've been working it on my socials for a while, but also with this Grammy nom, I'm always tagging the Academy and everything, and trying to network through people just to make them aware. So it definitely does, and it will, and it will have long-standing um, influence as far as people knowing. A lot of people know about some of these artists. They're just not sure about all of them. And they're all really, like I said, they're all really interesting people that deserve to be remembered.
Yeah. And how do you hope that that will impact blues as a genre moving forward?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how it will, because blues has always respected female instrumentalists, I think. And there are a lot in blues. There are a lot in classical female guitar players, and I attribute that to the fact that Ida Presti was doing it as a young girl in the 1930s and 40s, and then in blues with Memphis Minnie and Sister Rosetta Tharpe and people like that, and then of course later on Bonnie Raitt and people who kind of carried it forward. So I think blues has always had this, and it just keeps blossoming. But it's good to, and different people have done similar projects. I wouldn't say I'm the first one to kind of do a historical document. Rory Block has done one, Del Rey, Aaron Harp. There's people have keep kind of reformatting some of this historical stuff and redoing it, and it's all great. It's great. We're all carrying it forward. So
Great. And yeah, blues is just seems to be that genre where the history keeps pulling back into the present, which is, so cool.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of out of touch with the times, but I don't know. Everything's still alive. Like it's still alive, that music. You can still play it. It's still there and it's still vibrant. And you put it, you drop the needle and you're still like, wow, like so just because it happened, 100 years ago doesn't mean it's dead or anything.
Especially now thinking it's strange to think of the 1920s and the 1930s as being, a full century ago. For some reason that feels odd.
I know. It feels completely odd because when I say 100 years, like the Carter family, that was 100 years ago. Like, so I was like, I'm like, God, so you got to get with the times, or maybe not. I don't know. You know, you should try to pull it forward. And there's something very pure about it that I think people are still extremely attracted to, like just a person with a guitar, no amplification even, there's just something still so pure about that, and that comforting to people, especially with our fast moving AI culture and where you don't know what's real and what's not. You do know what's real if you're just sitting there with a guitar.
Yeah, that style feels untouched in a way, where
Yeah.
many music genres aren't these days. Yeah.
It's really pure, and it's not easy to do that, to be that pure. I love pure. I love organic music.
I wonder, speaking to, the blues, the traditional blues, and then now moving into the changing landscape of music today, it's changed so much in the last few decades. I wonder, what do you think, generally speaking, about blues as a genre today for both established and emerging artists? What do you think about where the genre is at?
I think it's really at a good place, actually. I think there seems a lot of young people embracing it now, and like I said, there's a lot of women instrumentalists that are coming up, and there's a lot of Black people that are embracing it again. So I think it's great, especially young Black people like Kingfish or Jontavius Willis. I always reference those two guys because I love them so much, but they're pulling it forward and they're delivering it back. Like John Tavius is doing all that traditional pre-war blues, and he's freaking great at it. And he's, a young Black guy from, Atlanta, which I think is just, it's astoundingly great. So I think it's in a really good place. There's a lot of young people, like maybe it is the purity of it and the soul. And I just think blues has such an important message, and it's such powerful music that it just keeps finding its way.
Yeah, and it seems like every couple of years there's kind of a storyline of, oh, is the blues dying out, or is it transforming in a way that is unrecognizable for people who love the traditional songs and the traditional styles. And I wonder if that ever rings true to you, or if, it sounds like it doesn't, like based on what you're seeing and just the volume of emerging artists coming into the genre and finding it for themselves.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think, that's a tough question because I think sometimes I think like the way I came up and the stuff we were exposed to, like a lot of these people died, and they don't have access to going to see Coco Taylor down, when she comes through town, or Albert Collins. And there's it's not to say there's not great artists now, but there was something that was alive then that isn't alive. I mean, literally isn't alive anymore physically. So it has diluted the music in some ways. And when we were coming up, there was a pretty high standard. I mean, really high standard, like you had to like really know how to play. And so sometimes I see some people play and I'm like, it's okay, and I don't want to be like cynical, but I'd be like, well, you need to be able to do this, because we just had to know how to do that. We had to know like every Freddie King instrumental, or, the difference between, early Chicago blues and Texas blues. Like you just kind of had to know the nuance, California blues. There was all these subtleties that how to play swing, or how to do a shuffle, or how to do, yeah, all the different types of shuffles. Like people they don't really know much about the nuance of shuffles anymore, like, so there is some stuff that has been lost, but there are still some really good players that are holding on, and they're still here. I'm still here. I know a lot about it, ironically, because I'm Canadian and a white girl, but I did study a lot.
Well, and that's an interesting idea too, because I think there's this general idea that because of music streaming platforms, a lot of the older stuff is more accessible to new audiences today. But as you pointed out, a lot of the people who were playing that music are no longer with us. And there's just something different about being able to go and watch someone in person that can help people learn something about the genre that they can't necessarily get just from listening to something on a streaming platform or watching a video online.
Right. And if you know what, and if you're opening up a show for Albert Collins, yeah, you're not going to get ahead of yourself thinking you're the shit, because Albert Collins is there, and he's going to fucking excuse my language, he's going to blow you away. So we kind of had that standing over us. Like there was really, and there still are some real hard hitters, but um, we kind of stood in the footsteps of these giants, and it makes you humble, but it also makes you really study and really practice hard, you know. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
wonder what do you think is the hardest thing for aspiring blues musicians? Now we're approaching the end of 2024, heading into 2025. What do you think is the hardest thing for people who want to launch a career for themselves in blues?
Um, hmm. The hardest thing is probably getting an audience and because and getting good and getting really good actually because a lot of people don't get to play as much as we did. Like we played a lot and we did a lot of gigs. And that when we were young, like when I first started out, we played 6 nights a week, 3 hours a night plus a Saturday afternoon matinee, like regularly. Like Monday to Saturday, you know, you'd be off Sunday and you'd travel to the next town and then you play another 3 hours plus encore each night of the week. Um, man, that's a lot of playing. And I don't think there's a scene to support that kind of playing anymore. Like now people do gigs and they go and they play an hour and then they'll have another gig a week a week later or something, or maybe a month later. So it's hard to get really good like that. Like it's you really have to play a lot. Like to get really good, to have really good technique and to be really good, to know how to work an audience, to know how to play in every kind of venue, you have to play a lot. You've got to be out there constantly. And it's not in your room, it's not on YouTube, it's not on IG, you know. You've got to be out there in front of an audience. And I think that's one of the main differences that it's just the whole scene has kind of shifted where people don't have access to that kind of gigging, first of all, and people don't go out as much. I mean, back when we started, people were out every night. You know, people were out till 2 a.m. every night, like 6 nights a week, you know. So that's a big difference. That's probably the hardest thing is just being able to play really well. I think, and also touring like that constantly, you get an audience over time. So I've got, you know, because I started over 30 years ago, I've got an established audience. I can travel around and gig in different parts of the world and there'll be people there. That's the other thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the returning audience member who will, keep an eye out for when you come to town next. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know all the ways of the youngins now and how they tour and how it all works. I know a lot of young artists don't feel like they could actually make a living at music. So that's hard too.
And
Because
would
do it fully, you know, to do it fully, you got to commit to it fully. And it's hard to do that when you're getting up to do another job.
Yeah. And would that be your best advice then for someone who's starting out is to just play as much as possible in as many places as possible?
Probably, yeah, because it takes a long time to learn how to play. You can fake it. I mean, you could shred, you could do some stuff and um, you know, you could do some flashy stuff, but to really learn how to play, like to really learn how to, like I said, work an audience and understand how to work, how to lead a band and deal with musicians and deal with the business. And there's a lot going on there, and you have to do a lot of it. Mhm.
And what do you find most exciting about blues and blues rock and where the genre is now?
Um, hmm, that's a good question. Most exciting? I don't really know. I don't know if I find it super exciting. As a genre, I'm not super stoked on blues rock as much anymore. I like it okay, but I'm really enjoying more nuanced music with maybe more acoustic elements. I mean, it's not that I don't love rock and roll. I still like it. I just think it's been beaten to death in some ways. So I'm waiting for something to let up, you know, just let up, and let's just play music and not just hammer away on, you know. So I'm not finding blues rock super exciting right now. I like I like I like different elements. I really enjoy being able to do like adding the acoustic, adding the, maybe some Latin or something into it that's making it kind of musical and vibey.
Right. And you mentioned some of the artists that you're excited about, and some of the newer artists that you're excited about. Are there others that you'd like to call out that you just find very exciting?
Um, there's lots that I really like. I mean, I think Lark and Poe are great. I mean, I think what they're doing is so cool, and I love their vibe. Um, shoot, I mean, Samantha Fish is working her tail off. I mean, that girl is, I don't know anybody that works as hard as her, and so I really salute her for her success. I love Tedeschi Trucks. Susan's a friend of mine, and I love their vibe too. Geez, I have to go through my Instagram feed to give you all the names. It's hard to think off the top of my head, but Gary Clark is cool. He's so talented from here in Texas. Those are people who are kind of doing, I think, big things in the genre and really have a lot of spirit and a lot of good taste, and they're trying real hard to bring things forward to a new generation. So I think that's really special.
Great, great. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time here. I wonder if there's anything else you'd like to tell our readers or, anything you'd like to say about that you're excited about for 2025. I imagine you'll be attending the Grammy Awards in February.
I'll be there. I got to get off the blues cruise because I'm on the blues cruise, but we're arranging for me to get off the boat early and head to LA. So yeah, I'll be there for the festivities. Yeah, if anybody is in the Recording Academy, certainly check out my stuff and that for one. But I'm excited for next year. We've got a lot of gigs booked with the band. We're doing real well, and just getting a Grammy nomination is a big burst of wind in your sails as far as the business goes, and people pay, all of a sudden paying attention. So that's been really cool. But I'm all about the work, basically. I get up every day and just kind of grind it out. So I'm happy doing it.
Well, congratulations again, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. We really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for spreading the good word, and what a great interview, man. I wasn't expecting such an in-depth interview, so it kind of caught me off guard.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. We appreciate that too.
Yeah, I appreciate it.